In a huge, shiny school floating in space, students from all over the galaxy gathered. Some came from planets of peace, others from warlike worlds. Some were huge and strong, others small and fast. All of them had different powers, skills, and stories. But one student from Earth stood out. Earth was known as a death world to the other students. Most aliens thought it was a planet filled with danger, but not in the way they thought. The other students often laughed when they heard about Earth. They thought the animals were weak, the people were slow, and the planet itself was old and tired. To them, Earth was just a tiny dot in space with no real value. But the Earth student, named Alex, was different. Alex was tough, tougher than anyone in the school had ever seen. They didn't look like much, just an average person by Earth standards. But their eyes told a different story. Alex had been through things that would have broken most people, but not them. They had learned how to survive in a world that seemed like it wanted to kill them at every turn. The other students had never seen someone like Alex before. They came from peaceful planets where everything was controlled, where food and water were always available, and where the weather never got too extreme. They didn't understand how someone from Earth could survive in a place so full of danger. One day, during class, the teacher asked everyone to talk about their home planets. The students from the peaceful planets bragged about their beautiful landscapes, their gentle animals, and their easy lives. They spoke about how they never had to worry about anything. The alien students looked at each other, proud of their worlds. But then it was Alex's turn. They stood up slowly and looked around at all the curious eyes. On Earth, Alex began, we don't have peaceful animals. We have creatures that would try to eat you if you're not careful. The other students laughed. They thought Alex was joking. After all, what kind of creatures could be dangerous on a planet that didn't even have superpowers? Alex smiled. There are huge beasts, creatures with claws and teeth, things that hunt in packs. They're not friendly, and they don't care if you're weak or strong. They only care about survival. Some of the students chuckled, thinking Alex was making it up. They had never seen such creatures before, and it seemed impossible. But Alex wasn't done. They went on to explain how they had once been trapped in a cave when a massive storm hit. The winds were so strong they almost knocked down the walls, and the ground beneath their feet shook like it was alive. I had to find shelter, keep calm, and wait until the storm passed. That's how we survive on Earth, Alex said. A quiet spread through the room. The students from peaceful planets started to look uncertain. The idea of living in such danger seemed unbelievable, but Alex spoke with such confidence that they began to wonder if there was truth in the Earth students' words. One of the alien students, a big creature from a peaceful planet, stood up and challenged Alex. You're saying your planet is dangerous? Prove it. Tell us one more story. Show us how tough you really are. Alex paused for a moment, eyes focused on the big alien. All right, they said. I'll tell you about the time I had to survive in the wild. No food, no water, just me and the planet. It wasn't easy, but I made it through. As Alex spoke, the other students listened. There was something about the way they told the story that made them believe. Earth's student wasn't bragging. They were sharing the truth, a truth so raw and real that it left the other students in silence. By the end of class, no one was laughing anymore. Earth's student had shown them that life on Earth wasn't easy, but it made people stronger. Stronger than they ever thought possible. The next day, the students gathered again in the classroom. The teacher, a quiet alien with soft blue skin, asked everyone to share more stories about their home worlds. One by one, students from peaceful planets spoke about their beautiful flowers, gentle creatures, and calm weather. They all spoke in happy voices, describing how everything on their planets was safe and predictable. But when it was Alex's turn, the mood in the room changed. Alex stood up slowly, looking out at the faces of the students. On Earth, Alex began, the animals aren't friendly. They don't care if you're strong or weak. They only care about one thing: survival. The other students stared, unsure if Alex was being serious. Most of them had never seen an animal that could be dangerous. Some of them thought that Alex was just trying to scare them. "What do you mean, dangerous?" one of the students from a peaceful planet asked. "You must be exaggerating. How can animals be dangerous?" Alex smiled, a small but knowing smile. "You have no idea what Earth is like." They paused, letting the words sink in. "Let me tell you about one of Earth's wild creatures." Alex then began to tell a story about a creature called a predator. On Earth, predators were animals that hunted other creatures to survive. Some were big and strong, others were quick and sneaky. One predator Alex had faced was a massive cat-like creature with sharp claws and teeth. It lived deep in the forests, hidden from most people. Alex had been hiking with friends when they heard a strange noise, a low growl that sent shivers down their spine. "We didn't know what it was at first," Alex said. "But we could feel it watching us." The trees around us were still, and the air felt cold, like everything was waiting. Suddenly, the creature jumped out from behind a tree. It was huge, with glowing eyes and sharp teeth. It wanted us for food. The class was silent as Alex continued. We didn't panic. We had to stay calm. We slowly backed away, making sure not to show fear. The creature followed us for a while, but we kept moving. After what felt like hours, it finally left us alone. The other students were wide-eyed. They had never heard of such creatures. "How did you survive?" one student asked, clearly amazed. Alex answered, "You have to think fast and stay calm. If you panic, you die. On Earth, that's the rule." Some of the students still couldn't believe it. "Are there more creatures like that?" a small alien asked. "You mean, there are more dangerous animals on Earth?" Alex nodded. "Yes. Some creatures are even worse than the one I just told you about. There are giant spiders, snakes that can swallow you whole, and even creatures that hunt in packs. They all want the same thing: to survive." The students from peaceful planets looked at each other, their faces filled with doubt. "But how do you live with all that danger?" one of them asked. "How can you stay there?" Alex shrugged. "You learn to survive. On Earth, we don't have the luxury of being afraid. If you're scared, you won't make it. You have to be stronger than your fear." The teacher, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "It seems your planet teaches a lot about survival, Alex. Most of us don't understand that kind of danger." Alex smiled again, their eyes a little sad. "We don't have a choice. Earth is dangerous, but it makes us strong. You learn how to survive, how to fight when you need to, and how to think quickly. That's what makes Earth's people different." By the end of the lesson, the other students were no longer laughing. They weren't sure if they understood everything about Earth's dangers, but they were beginning to realize that Alex wasn't just telling stories. They were telling the truth. For the first time, the students from peaceful planets looked at Alex with new respect. They had no idea how dangerous Earth really was, but they knew one thing for sure: Earth's toughest student was someone they would never forget. The next day in class, Alex's classmates couldn't stop thinking about the wild creatures of Earth. They had never imagined that a planet could have such dangerous animals. But Alex wasn't done telling stories. There was much more to Earth's dangers than just wild animals. This time, Alex would talk about something even more terrifying: Earth's natural disasters. When the teacher asked the students to share more about their planets, the students from peaceful worlds again talked about calm weather and perfect conditions. They spoke about how their planets never had earthquakes, floods, or storms. Everything was always just right. Then it was Alex's turn. They stood up and took a deep breath. On Earth, Alex began, we don't have calm weather. We have storms, earthquakes, and volcanoes. Our planet is always changing, always alive. And sometimes, that means everything can suddenly break. The room fell quiet. No one had expected this. The students from peaceful planets looked confused. How could a planet with so many dangers survive? How could people live there? Alex continued. Let me tell you about the time I survived a massive earthquake. On Earth, we never know when an earthquake will happen. One day, I was walking down the street when the ground suddenly began to shake. At first, I thought it was a small tremor. But then, the shaking got stronger. Buildings started to crack, and the ground opened up. The other students gasped. What did you do? One of them asked, clearly afraid. Alex nodded. I had to stay calm. I knew that running would be dangerous because the ground was moving. I found a strong building and ducked under a table. The shaking went on for what felt like hours, but it was only a few minutes. The students couldn't imagine living through something like that. How did you survive? A tall student from a peaceful planet asked. By being ready, Alex said. On Earth, you always have to be ready for something to happen. There's no warning for most disasters. But if you know what to do, you can make it through. The class was silent, each student thinking about what Alex had just said. What about floods? One student asked. Are there floods too? Alex smiled. Yes, floods happen too. Earth has huge rivers, and when it rains too much, the rivers can overflow and cover everything in their path. There was a time when I was trapped in a flood. The water was rising quickly, and we had to find higher ground. I had to climb to the top of a building to stay safe. The students from Peaceful World shuddered. How do you live through all that? One asked. It's not easy, Alex replied. But on Earth, you learn to stay calm and think ahead. When a disaster strikes, you don't have time to panic. You have to act fast. And volcanoes? A small alien from a hot planet asked. Do you have volcanoes? Yes, Alex said. Earth has many volcanoes, and some of them are still active. I once lived near one that erupted. The ground rumbled, and the sky turned dark. We had to leave everything behind and run. But we didn't panic. We knew where to go, where the safest places were. Alex paused and looked around the room. You see, disasters are a part of life on Earth. But that's what makes us strong. We have to survive the hardest things, every single day. But we do it, because we don't have any other choice. The other students sat still, shocked by the stories Alex had shared. They had never thought about Earth's dangers in this way. They didn't realize how much strength it took to live on a planet where disasters were a part of life. For the first time, they understood what Alex meant when they said Earth was a death world. It wasn't just about the creatures or the weather. It was about how the people of Earth had to be strong enough to face the worst things the planet could throw at them and still survive. As the bell rang to end the class, the students were quiet. Alex had given them a glimpse into a world they would never forget. Earth's dangers were real, but so was the strength of its people. And now, for the first time, they had respect for the Earth student. The students in the class had already heard many of Alex's stories about Earth's wild animals and dangerous natural disasters. But they were still curious. They didn't quite understand how a planet filled with so much danger could create people who survived it all. Alex had already shown them that survival on Earth wasn't easy, but today, they would hear a different kind of story. This time, Alex would talk about the fight for survival against other humans. When the class gathered the next day, the room was filled with an air of excitement. The students from Peaceful Planets were ready for more stories, but this time, they were nervous. They had already learned that Earth was a harsh world, but now they would hear something even darker. Alex stood in front of the class, looking around at the curious faces. On Earth, Alex began, it's not just the wild creatures and natural disasters that make survival hard. Sometimes you have to fight other people to stay alive. The room fell silent. The idea of fighting other humans seemed strange to the students from peaceful worlds. They lived in places where war and fighting were almost unheard of. To them, everyone worked together for the greater good. But Earth was different. On Earth, people didn't always have that luxury. Alex told a story about a time when they were younger, living in a rough part of a city. It was a place where crime was common, and the law didn't always protect people. One day, Alex was walking home from school when a group of strangers surrounded them. They were loud, angry, and wanted trouble. I didn't know what they wanted at first, Alex explained. But I knew that in a place like that, trouble could come from anywhere. The class listened closely, hanging on every word. They started shouting at me, asking for money for my things. They weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. Alex's voice was steady, but the students could tell that this story was serious. Most people would try to run or hide, Alex continued. But that's not how it works on Earth. You can't always run. Sometimes you have to fight. Alex didn't fight because they wanted to. They fought because they had no other choice. I kept calm. I knew if I showed fear, they'd take advantage of it. I had to think fast. I grabbed a stick from the ground and swung it at one of them. It caught him off guard, and I was able to break free. The students from peaceful planets were shocked. They couldn't imagine being forced into a fight like that. Didn't you get hurt? One of them asked, clearly worried. Alex shook their head. I didn't get hurt, but it wasn't easy. It wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being smart. It was about using what I had to protect myself. The teacher, who had been listening quietly, nodded. It seems that life on Earth forces you to learn how to defend yourself, Alex. That's not something most of us have to worry about. Alex agreed. On Earth, survival isn't just about the wild animals or the weather. Sometimes it's about the people around you. Not everyone is friendly. Not everyone will help you. So you have to learn how to protect yourself. As the students sat in silence, they realized just how different Earth was from their worlds. They had never had to face a fight for survival, but Alex's story showed them that on Earth, survival came in many forms. It wasn't just about running from dangerous creatures or avoiding disasters. Sometimes it was about facing other people who wanted to take what you had and fighting to keep it. I've had to fight more than once, Alex said, their voice soft but firm. But each time, I learned something new. I learned to trust my instincts, to think fast, and to always be ready for anything. The class was quiet. They didn't know what to say. They couldn't understand fully what it was like to live in such a dangerous world. But they began to realize that Alex's strength didn't come from just surviving nature's dangers, it came from surviving everything. It came from facing danger in all its forms, whether it was from an animal, a disaster, or another person. As the bell rang, the students were left with a deep respect for Earth's toughest student. They had never known a world like Earth's, and they were starting to understand that living on such a planet meant being strong in ways they had never imagined. The class was quiet as the last bell rang. The students from peaceful planets sat still, their minds racing with thoughts of Earth's dangers. They had heard about the wild creatures, the natural disasters, and the tough battles people had to fight just to survive. But there was still one thing they didn't understand: how did Alex and others from Earth keep going despite all the challenges? What was it that made them so strong? The next day, when Alex stood in front of the class, they knew it was time to explain. So far, Alex said, I've told you about the dangers of Earth, the creatures, the storms, and even the fights for survival. But there's one thing I haven't told you yet. One thing that makes Earth's people different. It's not just about fighting or surviving. It's about how we never give up. The students listened closely. They had already learned that Earth wasn't an easy place to live. But what was this never give up part? Was that what made people from Earth so tough? Alex began to explain. On Earth, we face challenges every day. We don't have perfect planets where everything is calm and controlled. But we do have something that helps us get through it all. We have each other. People on Earth don't just fight for themselves. They fight for their families, for their friends, and for their communities. One of the students from a peaceful planet raised a hand. But if Earth is so dangerous, isn't it every person for themselves? They asked. Alex shook their head. Not at all. On Earth, we know that we're stronger when we work together. The strongest people are the ones who don't just think about themselves. They think about the people around them. And when disaster strikes, when danger is all around, the people of Earth fight to protect each other. The students were quiet as they thought about this. On their planets, they had never needed to fight for each other. Everything was always safe. But Alex was telling them that on Earth, survival wasn't just about the individual. It was about the community, the bonds that tied people together even in the toughest of times. Alex continued. Let me tell you a story. There was a time when a huge storm hit the city I lived in. The winds were so strong, they knocked over buildings. The rain was pouring down in sheets. People were trapped in their homes, unable to get out. It was chaos. But in the middle of the storm, I saw something amazing. Neighbors helped each other. People came together to keep each other safe. The class listened, intrigued by Alex's words. A group of people in my building worked together to clear the debris and find safe shelter. It wasn't about being the fastest or the strongest. It was about working together, staying calm, and helping one another. That's how we survived. That's how we always survive on Earth. The students from peaceful planets didn't know what to say. They had never had to face such a storm. They couldn't imagine a world where people needed to rely on each other just to stay alive. But Alex's story made them realize something important. On Earth, we don't just survive because we're tough, Alex said. We survive because we never give up, and we never leave anyone behind. We have each other. That's our advantage. That's why Earth's people are strong. Because no matter how hard things get, we always find a way to keep going. Together. The room was silent for a moment. The students were deep in thought. They had never understood Earth's strength until now. They thought survival on Earth was about fighting wild creatures, surviving natural disasters, or winning battles. But they had missed the most important part, the power of community. For the first time, the students from peaceful planets looked at Alex with true admiration. They had learned something they would never forget. Earth's toughest people weren't just the ones who could survive the harshest environments. They were the ones who could keep going, no matter what, because they didn't fight alone. As the class ended, the students quietly walked out, each of them thinking about Earth in a new way. They now understood that Earth's true advantage wasn't just in its dangers, it was in its people. And Alex had shown them that strength came not from fighting alone, but from standing together.